Racist! Fascist! Greetings, liberals, progressives, libertarians, burners, especially dear to my heart, and others. Welcome to the Jolly Scholar 888 discussion series. I hope to create a forum here for you who identify as liberal or recovering liberals, where you can at least engage in conversations with what would seem to be a fundamentally different social, political, and cultural persuasion, but maybe come to the realization that, first of all, we're not really that far apart. We being libertarians, anarchists, and even constitutional Republicans. And secondly, you may find a place where you're free to air doubts that I'm sure you have had at one time or another, just as I had, about exactly where is the progressive movement going. I've spent my entire life in the arts and humanities. My PhD is in ethnomusicology. It's basically the anthropology of music. I was a flamenco guitarist, a singer, rock and roll guitarist, and recently I started, a few years back, a technology company that's really heavily involved with artistic expression as well. In this introductory video, I would simply like to suggest that most people who identify as liberal have had at one time or another, as I did, similar thoughts and doubts, but that due to the odd intolerance of the liberal establishment, you found yourselves mostly keeping those thoughts to yourself. It's really curious, isn't it? The progressives are actually afraid of their own kind. Really, you progressives, you liberals are afraid of your own people. Isn't that odd? You know, I could, right now, call up any good friend of mine and tell him or her that I've had a sudden change in my thinking towards socialism, and that I was actually considering becoming a supporter of Bernie Sanders. I would have no real price to pay for that. They would simply suggest a good therapist, just kidding, or they would invite me for a beer and ask me what's up. Can you liberals say that about your friends? I know the answer is no. You're actually afraid of your own friends. How did that happen? Right here. And really, since I just mentioned it, let's start with this one. Number one, the kind of pack mentality where any idea that goes against the leftist mob's party line gets attacked like a pack of rabid hyenas. Surely you've seen that happen on social media. And maybe it's even happened to you. People who are completely on the liberal side of things suddenly are savaged by the liberal mob. They're forced to either publicly recant or they become permanent persona non grata. Take J.K. Rowling. It's a very high-profile example, but really it happens to everyday people all the time. The fact that most, if not all, of this seemingly fascist intolerance comes out of our universities, how did that happen? We who are familiar with the academy know only too well the ideological background of where all this is coming from. We know how it happened. But it's still curious how it became so monolithic, so all-pervasive, so militant, and really so fascist. It's at least odd, isn't it? Comes from the universities? I'll have a lot to say about that. What about the curious relationship between Western feminism and the fetish with Islam, Islamic immigration, and that Islamophobic hammer that's used to shut up any discussion? Haven't you noticed that feminists from Islamic countries who seek asylum in the West, women like Ayaan Hirsi, are astonished at how the Western feminists marginalize them, try to shut them up, while at the same time they embrace Muslim activists like Linda Sarsour? I have a lot of examples of this. One particularly egregious one comes from Sweden. You know, Sweden, who has the first feminist government. Yeah, that's Sweden. And yes, we all support LGBTQ ad infinitum. But haven't certain issues gone a little overboard? And aren't they at least worth discussing? Like a male wrestler self-identifies as a female and engages in competitive wrestling. Doesn't that at least deserve a conversation? And again, why the militant shutting down of any dissent and the instant mobilization of the hyena social media mobs? How does that even happen? And happen so quickly? It's as though there is a mechanism set up and ready at hand for instant mobilization. Who or what is behind that? We can look at Antifa. Haven't you wondered that they are actually working for the cities they pretend to be protesting against? And that's a whole curious subject right there, isn't it? Then there's BLM. Of course Black Lives Matter. But they've done nothing for the black community here in America. And yet they embrace global Marxism? And you burners, I have a lot to say about the Burning Man phenomena. I think it's the most interesting, fascinating phenomena that's going on in current American culture, maybe even global culture. But aren't burners against big corporate sponsorship and commodification? How did you end up in complete lockstep, and rapidly so, with big pharma, big government, and big tech on the COVID lockdowns? How did that happen? Why do almost all of you have the same opinion on the lockdowns? Does that really make sense? What happened to radical self-expression, self-reliance? But I've witnessed some events at Burning Man that you might also find curious. I've seen the Academy at work there. And I'm hoping that you're not going to be totally railroaded, but, I'll get things come to an end. Here's something I'll be talking quite a bit about, and probably will rub some of you wrong, but global socialism is global fascism. You haven't thought of that? Well, maybe it's about time you did. In my other videos, I've espoused the theme that all socialism manifests as fascism, and history has proven me correct. It is correct. At any rate, I hope this site can serve as a platform for real discussion and a platform for me to present my social model of techno-anarchism. The site is still in its initial stages, but if you find anything that intrigues you, please drop me a line. So thanks for listening, and I hope to see you again. And by the way, did I mention that cultural Marxism needs to be driven out of our universities? Just a thought. Racist! Fascist!